Welcome to Pleasure Central Radio, the place to rethink the assumptions we don't even realize we are making that keep us from getting what we truly want out of work, life, and love. Here is your sneak peek into an authentic, pleasure-focused conversation. On the podcast today on Pleasure Central Radio, I have my very good friend, Nneka Kelly, the working mystic, who I have known since, I think, probably 2005. And we met online on a forum, of all things, on the Abraham Hicks forum, which I think at the time was theabeforum.com, and now it's abeforum.com. It's changed a little bit. But we connected on the forum in part because of some of the things that I read in her post about relationships. And I thought, oh my gosh, this woman thinks like I do. I want to connect with her. And we did. We were able to connect online a few times. Then we connected when she came out for the Alaska Cruise barbecue, or the Abraham Hicks Alaska Cruise. And she came a day early to hang out at the Seattle Abraham Group barbecue. And that's when we first met in person. But we had already known each other and been talking for what, 3 years? 5 years? Wow. But yeah, wow, that's pretty cool. And then we've had interactions on and off over the years as well. And it's been really neat to see how Nneka and my career paths have kind of woven around each other. We've both been in corporate. We've both run our own businesses. We have a very similar way of thinking in terms of very analytical and very creative at the same time. And it's always fun to bounce ideas off of Nneka and see what she comes up with, things that I've completely missed or vice versa. And really delicious to have you here on the podcast. So welcome, Nneka.
Oh, wow. Hi. Thanks. Thanks, Rebecca. That was a wonderful intro. And thank you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's just such a wonderful journey that we've had together. And since meeting each other in person and since even knowing each other online, I mean, way back then, life was so different, right? At least it was for me. It was
Life was so different.
so very different.
I think that must be at least 12 years ago now, right?
Yes, like 2006, 2007, a lot has happened. Even between like 2011 when we met in person and now. I know one of our mutual friends, Rico, always tells me, it's like, that's old Nneka and there's new Nneka. And so a lot of that I have to attest to the Abraham Hicks teachings for that. And I think we reconnected again because I was talking about conversations, right? Having meaningful conversations. And I think this is a good forum. Maybe we'll do some more of these. But what I was talking about was having conversations that are more than just a like on a post or even that sounded great, but having something deeper. I think in the early days of forums and even blogs, also this is kind of a topic that we could talk about, the evolution of the internet, pretty much, and social media. So I started on the internet way, way back. I remember when I was in college, my internship, they introduced this concept of the search engine. And it was like in 1995. It was when we were all excited about the search engine. I was doing this internship in engineering education. And my mentor came over to me and he was like, oh, have you seen this? We could look things up now. We don't have to like we could find papers on XYZ. We don't have to go look in the library. We could just Google it. And I was like, what?
But that was before Google it was a verb, right?
Was a verb. Yeah, exactly. We could just search for it on this search engine. And he didn't even call it a search engine. He was like, you can go to this website and search for things and it'll bring it up. And you're right. It was before Google it was even a thing. It was just going to this website and searching. And there's such a miracle of what has happened between then and today with the connections that we've been able to make over time and the information that we now have access to. But part of that, so I rode that wave before Google was a search was a thing. And it was just a website. And then I had my own e-commerce business with my ex-husband. And that was when blogging came along. So we were doing this e-commerce business and we went to Webmaster World conference where I met the Google engineers, the people who actually wrote this. I was like all geeked out, totally geeked out. But we were talking about this new thing that was coming up. And people were like, oh, you can have diaries online and talk about like what's going on with your life. This new thing, blogging. This was in like 2003, 2004 time period. 2003, 2004. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. I feel so old now.
I know it's hard not to talk about this stuff and be like, wait, what? How?
It feels like ancient
What?
history, but it happened in half of my lifetime. Like not even like it didn't even take my whole lifetime. It's like in half of my lifetime, we have revolutionized the way that we connect. So we go to this conference, Webmaster World, and I'm all geeked out to meet the Google engineers because I'm fascinated with the search engine that I learned about in, like 1995, like 10 years before. But now there's this new thing called blogging. And I talked to my ex-husband about it. I'm like, we should start a blog for the business. We sell plus size lingerie, which is a whole other topic we probably get to. But we sold plus size lingerie because I love lingerie, and they didn't have lingerie in my size. So it's like this would be great. We could write articles about lingerie, and it'll generate more traffic to the website. And that's how I got interested in blogging. So while we did the blog for our business, which by the way skyrocketed our sales, we went from like $1,000 a month to like $10,000. So yes, out of this world. It was mind blowing because the search engines loved of the organic way that blogs were made. They had content, it was content rich. You could talk about what you wanted to talk about. The links were your relationships were authentic because you were really speaking with other people through that medium. And so I started blogging for the e-commerce business, but then I started my own personal blog in like probably before 2006. No, like 2006. I started my own personal blog to kind of document. This is when I got introduced to Abraham. So before Abraham, I was in a Unity student in Unity. But then Abraham kind of blew the whole thing wide open because I finally understood how to put it into practice, right? So I started a blog to talk about that, spirituality and metaphysics and law of attraction and all of that stuff. This is back in 2006. And I started connecting on the forums. I started having real conversations about metaphysics and law of attraction and all of that. And then along came Facebook. And Facebook became kind of like a networking medium. I think for me, even as I speak about this now, I'm realizing that I've had less of the conversations about metaphysics and the things that I like to talk about on Facebook than I have been using it as like a networking tool. I also on Facebook though, I belong just like in for my business, I started this kind of side project. I belong in side groups on Facebook. So things of interest like non-monogamous relationships or yeah, I've opened it up. So non-monogamous relationships or metaphysics or spirituality, those kinds of things, even masculine, feminine polarity. Now that I'm getting into that, I've found worlds for that on Facebook groups, but we don't have open discussions about it in kind of like our living room. It's almost like you go to a conference and there are all these people, but the Facebook groups are like breakout sessions. And your main personal page is like what you say at the front, but we're not having those deep discussions on our personal pages. It's more like, oh, hi, how are you doing? It's very casual. And the other day I was just like, oh, I really want some meaningful conversation. And so I started doing that. So it didn't take very long for that to happen. And ironically, well, not ironically, this is how the law of attraction works, right? So yesterday I go to yoga and I said, okay, I want to take up the yoga practice because apparently yoga is like the new church. Yoga studios are like the new church. It's where all our unchurched people and spiritual nomads go to gather.
Wait, that's
And I'm
new?
it's new to me. Uh, it occurred to me yesterday. It's like, oh, this is where we hang out. Because I made a friend at the yoga studio and she had the same thing. So we were having the conversation about meaningful conversations and she was feeling the same way. And you could just see her face light up. She's like, oh my God, it's a real conversation. We're actually talking about stuff that matters. Because we got into her doula practice and she moved here. We had just met and pretty much we talked about stuff that we don't even tell our families, you know, because I think we're craving that. And because I think we have heart to heart conversations in those spaces. So that's kind of, you know, what I wanted to chat about today is how to have more of those heart to heart conversations or meaningful conversations, as I call them.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up and to talk about because, in part because of the thread that you posted on your Facebook page, I have been thinking more about it myself and thinking, how do those heart to heart conversations come about? Because it's not every single post that someone posts on Facebook that gets into deep conversation, right? Not even when we post really thoughtful things, but it doesn't always get connected with. People don't always get drawn into it and have that kind of interaction in the comments. And so I was thinking about that, and in the response to you that someone had posted about, yeah, I think social media is really just for entry-level connections, and if you really want to connect with people, then you need to connect in person, and if you're going to do it online and do some kind of video connection, then there needs to be no replay. And I thought about that, and I can definitely see the point. And I have felt a lot of value in both having replay, depending on the situation, and in not needing to connect in person. So you were a part of one of these book studies for a while, but running a meetup group here in Seattle, I found that there's a lot of really delicious teachings that are helpful to dive into. Like I started a book study on the wealth dynamics stuff that Roger James Hamilton had been doing or is doing, and found that to be really useful. And what was funny is even though everyone who was in the book study was in the same city, getting us all together at the same place at the same time was really quite challenging. You know, it's like, does Monday nights work for you? It works for most people, but not for everyone. If it's before 7 o'clock and they live in the other part of town, then they can't get here by then, and then they have to have some dinner. And so there's a lot of logistics that go into getting into the same place at the same time. Now, there's a lot of value in that. It's huge, immense amount of value in being connected and together with people. And when we switched over to the mixed format, so we had a computer online on Zoom, and people could log in and connect to us that way, and people could also come to my house at the same time. That really made a difference because there was maybe 7 or 8 people that weren't able to show up at that time in that neighborhood that were able to connect online, and there were a couple of people from halfway across the country that were able to connect with us that really wanted to be a part of the group. So I found that to be really useful. I remember thinking having a replay of this is kind of like having homework. And I didn't really want to give people homework, but it still was useful because reviewing the material, it was such new stuff and so useful to go over it, that it worked in that situation. And the other situation that I found that it really worked in was how we met was on the forum, because those were not conversations that we were having at the same time. It was an online forum. It was a text-based forum. So we would have the conversation sporadically as we went. But the real value I found in the forum was going back and being able to read other people's thoughts and experiences and say, oh, wow, that was really cool. That is what generated the conversations for me.
It's almost like it's almost like doing a course where you can go back to the notes, or and even the thought of consuming information at a pace that is comfortable to you, which is, of great value online and in person, because in person you do it in a way, right? So you consume information at a pace that is useful to you when you meet in person and you have a coffee chat, and then the conversation naturally ends and it is complete. But sometimes we're in a course or even in a workshop, something like that, and after the first 20 minutes or so, you've gotten what you need, but you feel obligated to do the other 3.5 hours. And on a forum, you don't need to do that. Or on social media and in the interwebs, you don't really need to do that. You can get the snippet, get the juice for that 20 minutes, and let let it go, let it sink in, integrate it, come back, take another sip, integrate it again. Even the conversation of going back and forth. There are a few people that I follow on Facebook. One of them is Chris Wood. Her posts are always so juicy. It's CYRS. If anybody wants to go there to look at it, CYRSWOOD. Her writing is amazing. She's a writer, but her posts are always very, very juicy. And sometimes you have an idea that pops up, and when you first read it, you may take that, let it marinate for a couple hours, then go back, comment, someone else comments. They're really, really engaging. And so that's the benefit of having forums or having social media conversations, is that you don't get fire hosed with information. You don't have to take it all in at one time. You don't have to respond to all of it at one time. You can even save it and go back to it for reference and journal about it as time goes on, and take it in little tiny morsels and little sips. Also, what I find very beneficial is the ability to connect. People say with like minds, but the ability to connect with people, I even say, of differing thoughts. So by that I mean, Rebecca and I met on the Facebook, sorry, on the Ape forum, and our introduction, our commonality was for Abraham Hicks material. But then a whole other world opened up, and at the time, I was married, so I was not even entertaining non-monogamous relationships. I had an idea about it. I kind of wanted to, I, 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 I wanted it, but I didn't know. It was an idea in my head that I thought was unique to me, until I met some other people who were talking about it. So see, the what started off as an ape connection turned into something a whole lot more. And even since then, not only do we have the non-monogamous relationships, but the business, the way that we do business is not conventional, even by today's standards of just being able to work from home. It's a way of attracting as opposed to pushing at all. And that is very, very unique. The topics that we discuss are very diverse. And this is not just the connection with Rebecca. There are probably about 10 other people that I met on that, and a whole shipload of other Avers that I met and can talk to that have different perspectives. And so I think that's one of the benefits of meeting online, is the connections are not just on that one topic, but across several things. As it turns out, you can start off in one topic, but you go into the little tributaries of everything else that life is.
I love that you mentioned that it was like minds but different thoughts.
Mm.
Because then it keeps it from being too much of an echo chamber. It's and I have to say I agree that when we go on the Abe cruises and we meet with people, there's so much diversity in those groups. And I joke sometimes that we often don't know what our Abraham friends do because we don't know what they do for a living or if they're married, if they have kids or any of that stuff because that kind of small talk just never comes up. And we spend a week on a boat with them 3 times a year, but it's not the most important thing that we talk about.
Mm.
Instead of saying, what do you do to get to know you? We're like, hey, what inspires you? What's juicy right now? What are you creating? What are you appreciating? And that leads to a whole different kind of conversation and a whole different kind of way to connect with people who are so different.
Exactly. And the juiciness changes, right? So when we met, I was married. I was clearly in a monogamous relationship. And since then, I've explored so many things. I've returned to a desire for um, not classical monogamy, but very, very close to it. And so, but it gave me the opportunity to explore all of the full spectrum in between. So it just, it's, it's rich. It's rich. One of the benefits of being on the Ape cruise was, as you said, meeting these diverse people. And I think in the US, when we think about diversity, so let's talk about that also. In the US, when we think about diversity, we think about race, we think about gender, we think about even sexual preference, so sexual orientation, sorry. We do not think in terms of diversity of ideas. And really, I believe that that's what we're reaching for when we're reaching for a diversity of ideas, of ways of living, so that we can choose from the smorgasbord. Because often when we grow up, we can only think of one way of living and one way of being, and maybe another one because your family has close friends. But usually your family ties are very close and similar in the way that your own family is. And so you don't get exposed or you don't get to experience that variety. But here again, online communication and even meeting people. So, what online communication does is it forwards the conversation beyond the demographics. So, when you meet in person, it's a richer conversation. It's not about what you do or it's a little bit about who you're with in terms of the quality of the relationship, but it's it's less about what you're doing for a living, but more about how are you living. It's and so we get to see the different ways of people, how people live. I remember meeting this couple that was married and they lived in separate houses, which was a completely phenomenal concept to me. It blew my socks off.
I love that. I actually met a couple like that in just before I left for college. I worked with this woman, and she was married and madly in love with her husband, and they would only spend 6 or 7 weeks a year together. They lived in separate states. When I observed it and I saw the way that they were able to work it out, I thought, okay, that's actually kind of brilliant. Maybe that's what I want to.
Yeah, so there are all these different ways of living, right? So, and that's another thing that I'm big about is choosing the way that you live, choosing the way that you want to have relationships, choosing the way that you want to make money, or choosing the way that you want to allow money, not even make it, but allow money into your life, right? And to receive it. Choosing how you want to express creatively. And also knowing that you can choose multiple ways of doing all of those things even at the same time. And maybe there's too much choice, right? Maybe we're too caught up in how much in the whole smorgasbord. Maybe we're overwhelmed by the buffet. But this is how the universe works. Whatever you are leaning towards, that's what shows up for you. That's the way that you get you're guided along the path. It's where you're looking and what is lighting up for you that helps you get guided along that path, especially if you are tuning in and if you're being obedient and following it. If you're not, then it feels like a struggle, but it really doesn't have to be. You could just go with the way you're being led. It will make your life a whole lot easier. Huge lesson.
I love that you bring that up. Go with the way you're being led, because that's a really big theme in the Abraham Hicks work. And it's been a
Hmm.
big theme in my own life as well. And I found that there are times in my life when I want to be an entrepreneur. There are times in my life when I want to work for someone else. It's just, honestly, it's just easier to work for someone else sometimes. And I know that you've done some of that too. You've gone into corporate and out of corporate and back into corporate. Do you want to speak to that a little bit and how that's been the path of ease for you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'll say how it was with the path of ease and how I've been resisting it and how I came to realize that I needed to this was my lesson that I needed to accept that it was a path of ease. So um again, as soon as I started working in corporate, I think one of the first books I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And it introduced me to the concept of passive income, which that's another concept that kind of like before that I thought that people work for money and you work hard, you get a good job and you go make money. And honestly, I was like, okay, if that's the path that we're going to take, we're going to get the best paying job possible. That's the easiest thing to do. If we're going to do it like that, then we're just going to get the best job possible. That's the easiest thing to do. And I've been very, very fortunate to have a lucrative career and and manifest these amazing opportunities that have just been phenomenal. And when I first started off, I used to think of my job as places getting paid to learn because I love to learn. And so that was one of the mindsets that I adopted very early on was I get paid to learn. And this is so cool that I get paid to learn. And another mindset that I adopted was that the easier I work, the more I get paid. So those two things combined make it very easy for me to go in and out of corporate. I started in corporate. I left. The first time I left was in rebellion, and it was more of a screw the 9 to 5 type of mentality. I left, and my ex husband and I started the e-commerce, the online plus size store, and then I went back in after that to give us a little bit more cushion. And in 2013, I left again. And when I left in 2013, my vibrational set point, to use an A term, was a lot higher because I not just made peace with working, I totally enjoyed it. I created work experiences tailored to what I desired. And I'll give you one example. So I was working this job as a consultant, and we had a stressful manager, we had a stressful client. I mean, this guy threatened to cut people's ties off. The guys that came in, he didn't like ties, so he would like cut their ties off, literally. And he was just very, very abrasive and in your face. And the manager was was like a really stickler micromanager. And so when I went in, I felt like initially, I felt like, oh, I'm stuck with these two people for the whole length of this project. This is not going to be good. But then this is right around the time that I started Ape too. I was like, oh, we could we could do this. We can manifest something different. So I trained myself to into a better feeling place and out of the place of, oh my God, I have to come to this job and I hate these people and blah 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 blah, into a place of I work with brilliant people. The guy, the cutting ties person, brilliant guy. I shifted into a place of I work with brilliant people. I love where I work. I started looking for the positive aspects of where I work. And I totally reformed the whole situation. That guy was moved to a different team. The manager somehow miraculously left the company. I didn't think he would ever, because he was one of the founding people in the company. So he left the company and went somewhere else. We got our own offices. Like, I had my own office, which is unheard of in corporate in those times, let alone for a consultant, because you're just somebody off the street. But I had my own office. It was just a miraculous shift. I made six figures. It just totally shifted. And right after that, I got offered like an even better job across the street from my house. It was because I was traveling 100% for that one. So then the next job that I got offered was across the street from my house, working for an online education company. Amazing purpose, wonderful. Then my old job called me back. I mean, the experience that I cultivated around that was so amazing and so lush that I had good memories when I left. I easily transitioned into working full time in my business, not out of a place of screw the 9 to 5, but just out of a place of, this is the next step for me. This is the next thing that I'm doing. It was such a wonderful transition, and so worked full time in my business for about 5 years. So from like 2013 until 20 half of 2017. So 4.5 years, and it was, oh no, actually 4 years, probably exactly. And it was a wonderful experience. But I'll tell you what, um, I like getting regular paychecks. And one of the things that I probably need to orchestrate in my business is the ability to have regular paychecks, regular recurring income. I like getting paid regularly. And the other thing is that I like that I interview once and I have the job and I go to work and I do the job and I come home. I do not have to constantly be in interview mode or selling mode. I think one of the beliefs that I have adopted that I would need to let go of is the always be selling mindset. The always on, always in that mode of getting, getting, getting. In the first place, the getting needs to stop and it needs to be attracting. But in the second place, I want to be in a place where selling is not a thing. And I know in business selling is a thing, but for some reason, can you hear me? For some reason, I do not think that it needs to be the central aspect of my business. I want the central aspect of my business to be what I do, as opposed to it being how I get business. So I don't know if that makes sense.
It
And so
really
I've had,
does.
yeah, and so I've had to re-enter the workforce, and I did it reluctantly. There was a lot of shame, there was a lot of reluctance. The moment that I started to look at the positive aspects and shift my focus, that was the moment when work became easy. I now I manifest the disappearance of meetings. I work from home 2 days a week. I work on a beautiful campus. It's a lovely, lovely experience, and that I think is because of how I feel about work. It's not a struggle unless I make it one. Unless I make it a struggle, I will not be there forever. It's temporary, but it's like it's where I am right now, and it's cool. So yes, you do what you need to do. You follow that path, and if you resist it, it's difficult. There's no need for me to resist working because I get paid very well. I work with wonderful people. Everything that I had been talking about or beefing my vibe up for before is what I have experienced now. Like the perfect, perfect opportunity right now. And I will move on. The next thing will be even better than this. It will be even better. But I want to talk a little bit about the sales thing and not having that be the central focus of business. What
Yeah,
you think?
I would love that. And great that you bring that up because I feel as if myself and a lot of other people in the independent business world and probably in the conscious creation world as well, we are bombarded with how to market yourself. And so it's
Mm,
almost like the amount of airtime it gets on Facebook and in our emails and all of that makes us feel as if it is the most important thing. And it is important because your business doesn't run without that kind of sales. But it's also out of whack to believe that it's the thing that we have to spend all of our time on. I know you and I have had some really fascinating conversations about what I call vibrational marketing.
wow.
Yeah, and I think that might be the secret, at least it seems to have been for me, to make who I am being how I sell instead of the strategy and tactics and all of that. That's not how I sell. It's just who I show up as. I
Mm-hmm.
think T. Harv Eker is the first place I heard this. He said, be someone that people want to spend time with, and then when they show up, charge them.
Oh my goodness, where did he say that? I need to get the book or I need to see it.
Yeah, well, it might be Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, which is the book that he wrote, T. Harv Eker. But I
Oh,
took a bunch of training courses from him and his company as well, Peak Potentials. And that was back in, actually, that was before I knew about Abraham. So that was even before we met, 2002, 2005, something like that. But yeah, it was the basic gist of things is be someone that people want to be around. And then when they show up, charge them.
mm. I love T. Harv Eker. I've read Millennium Mindset. I need to go back. I need to go back and read that. So, vibrational marketing. Um, I love that you say be who you are and when they show up, charge them. I have noticed I started following a different teacher, and I've been following a different teacher for about a year and a half now. Not for metaphysics stuff, but for masculine feminine polarity and being feminine. And I love her and I love her work. And she just went through a launch, so I can see that. But I have noticed that I have never felt guilt, shame, or doubt out of an Abraham experience. And I've always wanted more. I've always, I've walked away, no, like not even walked away, but in the middle of the event or in the middle of what I'm listening to on YouTube or in the middle of reading a book, I'm rereading Money and the Law of Attraction, and I want more because it's so juicy. And they don't mention, they don't lace the book with mentions of their cruises or their workshops. They don't lace their workshops with mentions of cruises. They don't lace the cruise, or sometimes they might mention it, but they don't talk about it constantly, right? In their work. And you walk away wanting more. You do not feel guilty for not getting the next thing. Like they don't make you think, oh, because you don't get the next cruise, it's because you're a poor manifester and you can't, like you don't have the money to buy it, or you have poor money mindset, or something of that nature. It just they don't do that. They don't. There's none of that. I think in sales is called addressing objections. They don't address objections. They don't. I don't even think that it's a thing as far
Yeah,
as they're concerned, right?
I think it's basically here's what we're doing. And if you come and join us, awesome. But you're right. Yeah, they don't even mention the cruises on a lot of the workshops and things. I think they'll mention the new one that they have just announced occasionally, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely not a hard sell kind of thing.
Yeah, and they mention that at the beginning and at the end, and maybe sometimes in the middle, like if S is really excited about a cruise or something, they might mention it in there. But for the most part, it just it doesn't happen. But you still want more. And so that is where I would like my marketing to get to. That's where, I understand the tactics and the flow, but that is where I would like to get to, where I am focused on, oh, this is really juicy, where I am focused on not even so much attracting, but where I am focused on the content that I am providing, and focused on teaching, and focused on mentoring, focused on channeling, if you will, focus on being intuitive, and allow that, as T. Harv Eker says, when someone shows up, then give them an opportunity to purchase. Not even so much like an opportunity to purchase, but even to the point where they're asking. And I must say that I have managed to do that a little bit, because I often, even now that I am not actively coaching, taking any new coaching clients, people are reaching out to me to ask about coaching. Not to talk, not to lace a conversation with the fact that I do. But it's like even now, where like, no, but I'm just, I just have this small email and I'm just gonna tell you what's going on with me. Like, I'm just gonna talk about law of attraction. I'm not selling anything because I have no bandwidth to coach right now or take on any new clients. But I get it. I think I'm starting to get it, that I can do it this way. And yesterday I was thinking, as I was walking the labyrinth, that I can do it this way. I can just be in the joy. I can just be an embodiment of what I'm teaching. I can just go ahead and teach and mentor and allow the flow of the exchange to happen naturally, as opposed to making it so and following the tactics. I'm still a little bit, I kind of like the tactics a little bit. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I find them entertaining and fun to play with.
Tactics can be really fun. I like that you bring it up this way, though, because there was something that I wrote or recorded recently, and it was about the difference between the masculine and feminine ways of having success. And
Mm,
this is how I've been feeling, and you've been studying a lot more of this than I have, so you might have a different perspective, and you're welcome to share that. What I notice in this last business that I've been running for the last 7 years, it was completely different than any other business I had done before. And it was much more the feminine way of success. So the way I described it is the masculine way of success is go out and get.
mm,
We're instructed to go out and get clients, go out and do advertising, go out and do this thing and search after it, try for it, right? And to me, the feminine way of success is to shine and receive,
mm,
which is so different. It's to sit there, to not sit as in sit still, but it's to be centered in myself, to be so connected with who I am that it shines out of my face and out of my body. And then when someone shows up because they see the shiny, then you're like, oh, I would like to do something for you. Being able to actually receive that and not just have the super independent woman syndrome of I can do it myself, thank you very much. It's like, okay, I'm going to shine, I'm going to receive, I'm going to shine, I'm going to receive, and making that my, I wouldn't say my marketing strategy, but making that how I move about in the world instead of I'm going to go out
mm.
and get, I'm going to go out and get, I'm going to go out and get. What are your thoughts?
Yes, yes to all of that. Um, I yes to all of that. Probably for the last year and a half, 18 to 20 months. And like I said, I've been working with my feminine mentor. She is excellent. I I love the way that she does business. I was attracted to her because of the way that she does business. Her name is Namaste Moore. She's like the embodiment of the feminine. And so I I was probably watching her and learning from her for a long time. But then she's had some, she doesn't talk about business much. She's talking about it a lot more now. But she is fully feminine, and she is married to someone who is fully masculine. And I think in Esther and Jerry's case, that was probably the way as well, because Jerry handled um, the masculine part of it, even the way that they set up workshops, right? He was the one who came on stage and talked about what was going on, and she did the shine and receive. She did that. That was all she did, and then he came on after. And so this is one of the reasons why right now, even before I wanted to be completely submissive in my relationship, that I want it even more now, because I want to fully embody being feminine in all the paths of in everything that I do. And in business, I enjoy business. I love it. And I love what I can do through it. And I would like to just shine and receive. But I do believe that the masculine is necessary. And for me as a feminine woman to hold both poles, I think has been a little bit conflicting or dissonant, and has hindered, or maybe it's been interesting to try to do both. And oh my goodness, so juicy. So as I continue to in this path, on Abe's path, on the feminine, on being feminine, on being God express, on being a goddess, as I lean more into that, it was more of like I didn't want to do all the other stuff anymore. And so there's a time period of adjusting, right? Because at one point, as the way that my business ran was a balance, so some masculine, some feminine. And then I shifted completely. I was practicing completely being feminine. So it took some time to get all the way over. And I think in that transition period, that was the moment of um it's easier for me right now to receive money from someone else's enterprise than to try to build it myself, because what I'm building at this time is my feminine. What I'm taking care of is my feminine, and feeding her and nurturing her and honoring her. Really, really, really honoring her, and being devoted and committed to her, not cheating with masculinity, or cheating with shadow feminine, really, because it's not really masculine, but cheating with shadow femininity is like so not you. And so fully embodying who I am, so rich. Fully embodying who I am has taken, it means that right now, the way that I receive money is through someone else's masculine efforts. I still show up and I still shine. I still shine and I still receive. And it's amazing what is manifesting around me. It's like a butterfly in the office. Yesterday, someone paid for my dinner, and I have no idea who it was. It's like, okay, I'll take that. So
Woohoo!
it's been a different way of being, for sure. It's been a different way of being. But I think you have shown me that as well, because you're just naturally that way. I find that
Oh,
very, very amazing.
thank you. I agree with you that it's not BL feminine or BL masculine. In fact, when you said your teacher is a very feminine, or what did you say, 100% feminine, and she's married to someone who's all masculine, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, how does that actually work? I don't think any of us can be all one way or all the other all the time. But what I've found is that when I aim for an 80-20 kind of thing, because I still
Mm-hmm.
have to take care of myself. Essentially, I'm a single woman in the city, so there's a lot of things that I need to do for myself. I need to make my own money and pay my own bills and make sure I get my body strong and work out and do that kind of stuff. And I have actually noticed that there's a cycle, a monthly cycle that goes along with my own cycle. And that at the beginning of my cycle, there's a whole lot of newness and excitement and freedom and curiosity. And then in the middle, I really want to be with people. And during those first 2 weeks, it's way more challenging for me to force myself to be masculine, to sit down and do some of the things that need to get done. So if I'm thoughtful about them and I make sure that I have time for them later, the second 2 weeks or so, then I'm not rushing to hit a deadline or trying to do masculine things when my brain really wants to be doing feminine things, my brain and my body. And then during the second half, I just get it all done and it's super easy. So as long as I wait for that and allow myself the time for that, then it flows in this really nice way. And I don't feel like I'm fighting it. I feel like I'm doing a lot of show up, receive, shine, just enjoy it. And then every now and then I'll have this inspiration. I'm like, I really want to get this done. I want to go and check out my bank account balance. I want to look at some of those reports. I want to do, see if I can change this and get a better deal on that monthly thing that I've got going on. And it just comes from an inspiration instead of I need to do this, you know.
Yes, what you just described was something that I learned that I'm now practicing and honoring as well, and honoring the feminine from Namaste More. She has a class called Moon Mysteries that talks about that ebb and flow. I was like, oh, all my life, I am a normal person because I thought that I used to teach this very a lot was that consistency. You have to be consistent, do the same thing every day, blah 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 blah, and be really committed. And there is a certain value in being consistent, but as women, we do have a cycle. We do have a monthly cycle, and even we have a monthly cycle, and there's a yearly cycle as well that works best for us. And this again goes along with the whole resisting and allowing, right? Having the path of least to go being on the path of least resistance. We are already on that path of least resistance, but we keep resisting because we don't think that it should look this way. I would say for myself, I kept resisting because I didn't think it should look this way. And the moment that I realized, I'm already on the path, I'm already going. I keep throwing these things in here to make it more difficult only because I am resisting being on the path that I am already on. And I will get to where I'm going a lot faster if I allow, if I let go, if I start to pay attention to what's going on inside. And I've been very, very fortunate to learn through a series of teachers that is the way of honoring it.
I love that you mentioned the Moon Mysteries thing. I haven't studied with Namaste More, though you have told me about her before, and
Mm.
I think she's pretty intriguing. I learned that from Alyssa Vitti.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then I remember last year or 2 years ago when we were doing some of the Roger Hamilton study, and he has a cycle that he recommends, but it's a weekly
Mm.
cycle. And it starts out with the creativity, and then it goes to, well, my weekly cycle would be the second day is focus on my why, the third day is focusing on people, and the fourth day is focusing on uh, team or something. I can't remember all the details of it. But what I realized is that, in part because you were so resistant to that, you had tried it and you're like, nope, this does not work for me. I'm tossing this in the bin. And I'm like, but wait, but give it a chance. And then the more I worked with it myself, the more I realized it's better if I transpose that into a monthly cycle and do it
Mm.
as a week at a time instead of a day at a time. And that really helps me with my creativity and my flow. So, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up.
I wonder though, because I don't know the men that are doing this work, but I wonder if what Roger Hamilton describes is more suitable for masculine than it is for feminine.
Well, I would expect it is because he's the
Yeah,
man
he's
and
a
he's the
man.
one who's
Yeah,
learning it and teaching it. And
yeah.
I don't think he has any at the moment any core women in his team or in his life that would be able to understand that, speak up about it. I don't actually know because I don't know his team very well. I've only listened to some of his videos and things like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm really glad that I made that discovery too because it
Hmm.
makes such a
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah, it has. I'm really glad that we in general, regardless of what we do learn or the information that we're being that we're consuming, we're like, no, this doesn't work because I'm so glad that we honor that more than the information being received because it's good information. It's not like I don't think that I've read or been introduced to anything that's bad. Even with the marketing, there's usefulness there. There's it's just some of it is less useful to me than some other parts of it. And for other people, it may be that more of it is useful to them. It's fine. Either way, it's fine. Again, the diversity of thought, the diversity of thinking, the diversity of being, and different ways to do things. That all of these things are valid. Isn't that cool?
That is
All of
really
this is
cool.
valid.
And you know
Yeah.
what? I've actually had some ahas around that in the last year, partially because of what Roger Hamilton teaches. He also has some teachings about the wealth spectrum. And that is
Mm-hmm.
depending on where you are in your wealth spectrum, or the lighthouse is one of the ways he talks about it. You will have different steps to success to get to the next piece. And this makes so much sense to me because if you're at the foundation level of the spectrum, that's where you're making enough money, but you're not really having a whole lot, then the steps to get to the next level, which is where you're an independent business owner or you've got clients seeking you out, those are going to be different steps than if you're already there and you're looking to build a team. And those
Mm-hmm.
steps to get you to building a team are going to be different than if you already have a team and are looking to have a group of teams, right? And usually it's contradictory. So the thing that got you to that step is the thing you have to let go of and do the opposite to get to the next step. And when he speaks about it like that, I'm like, oh, this makes so much more sense in the rest of the world because you're right. There's a lot of value in all of the marketing stuff. And if you're at a different place, then trying to implement those strategies and tactics is potentially going to backfire on you. And I think I've seen
Mm-hmm.
this the same thing in Abraham work that because they
Mm-hmm.
have all kinds of things that sound contradictory. And exactly, I see you like nodding and doing a thumbs up. They have things that sound contradictory. But what I learned when I first started exploring their work was to, how do you say this? To listen, to go with what really felt good in the moment, what felt right, what felt like it filled me up, what felt like it gave me power. So I would listen to the videos that felt like I felt better after them. And it would change because I would have my favorite videos that always seemed to make me feel better until all of a sudden they didn't. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, time for some new favorites. And then I'd go and find something else, and it was stuff that I hadn't even known was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then those would feel good. And then I'd go and search for something else that would feel good. And that was a whole different set of things. And I kept wondering why. I was also collecting this repository of quotes. I kept wondering why I would do the same thing with quotes. I'd find my favorites, and then I'd get really juiced up by reading them for a long time. And then there would need to be new ones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is that working? What is that going on? And I think it's that thing. It's, I'm stepping into a new place in my own evolution. I've recently discovered the same concept with a new set of teachings that I'm working with, the Sweet Medicine Sundance teachings. And they have a similar way of looking at things. They've got it's not a scale really, but it's a path. And there are different points on this path. And depending on where you are on that path, different things will make sense to you, and different things are not prescribed, but some sort of like that. And one of the things that I have been hearing about in this tradition is a warrior's task. And it's something that you're doing not because it's easy and not because it feels good necessarily, but it's something because you have recognized that you want the benefit of doing that thing. And I find that to be really delightful because it
Mm.
allows me to look at not just what feels good in this moment, i.e., what is the sugar that I'm putting in my mouth, or what is the thing that's going to give me a temporary high, but it lets me look at, what are my hungers that I really am wanting to feed here.
You said two really important things. The first on the where you are on a map, even I would probably put it on a map as opposed to a path, because people get hung up on the ascension of a thing, and it's really like if you walk on a labyrinth, you can sometimes, when you're looking at the labyrinth, someone may be way on the outer circle, but they are closer to the inner circle than someone who looks like they're close to the inner circle, if you're walking that path. And on a map, you know, the Americas, you have Europe, Africa, Asia on a map. Depending on where you are on the map, it's a different cultural experience. So what may work in the US may not work for you in South America. And what will work for you in Africa may not work for you in Asia, and vice versa. So it's the same concept. The place is an important thing. Even in our living, in our experience of life, place is an important thing. Where you are in terms of your vibration is important. When I work with my students, I talk about this a lot. It's like everybody wants to get to joy. But, when you're feeling depressed or or enraged, it's very difficult to get to joy. And often results in more depression and more rage and more frustration if you're trying to get to joy. But if you're feeling depressed and you play some Eminem or some really angry music or something that can get you to rage, then you feel a lot better and doors and pathways open up to you. Now, screaming and yelling cuss words out of a car may not seem like it's the right thing to do, law of attraction wise, right? It may not seem like it might not seem like it's a politically correct thing to do metaphysically, but it's the thing that you need to get you to the next step. It's the thing that you need to get to the next step. And that's the only step that you can take, is the next step. You cannot quantum leap, or you can, but it's going to feel bad. And by feeling bad, I mean, I do not mean feel uncomfortable or, well, I'll talk about comfort in a minute, because I'm understanding the delight of comfort and being in your comfort zone. That's a whole other thing. But feeling like you have to somehow push again to achieve some vibrational level that's going to get you this thing will not get you the thing. Not nearly as fast as just getting to a better feeling place. Just just doing the next thing in front of you that you need to do. That was one of the things that I loved about Wealth Dynamics, that he did have that lighthouse. I loved it, because you're right. What you need to do to get from depression to anger is not the same thing you need to do to go from, say, frustration to contentment. It's two different things. And when you hear those processes, when you think about doing a rampage of appreciation, for example, you're going to do a rampage of hate. You're going to do the complete opposite when you're in depression than when you're feeling already content, because a rampage of appreciation from contentment is like a hop, skip, and a jump away. It'll easily get you into a different vibration. So it's valuable. Place is necessary, and so it's important to know really where you are and allow your feelings. Give your feelings some airtime. Give them some voice, because it's important. It's just, I asked a colleague the other day. I asked her, does it feel right to say that you don't care what other people think? Or do you actually really don't care what other people think? And it was like, huh. It's like, and I'm going to tell you, for a while, it's okay, because it's giving you some feedback. It's letting you know where you are. But as long as you continue to cover up that you don't care what other people think, you're walking around wearing this armor, and in your mind, in your brain is that way, but in your entire body, in your entire vibration, in your entire aura, it's all about, oh my God, I'm worried about this, I'm hiding out here, I'm scared here. Then you're never gonna get to the point where you don't care what other people think. It's
And
it's
that's all what Abraham talks about with the happy face sticker, right? It's important
Yes.
to feel what you're feeling. Yeah, you want to feel as good as possible and be pointing in the direction of the best thing that you can feel. And you got to feel what you're feeling because it's what you're feeling.
Yeah. It just tells you where you are. There's no need to hide it. I love that they talk about the happy face sticker over the empty gas tank. It's like, you're running around on E, you're gonna run out of gas. Listen, the car is gonna stop whether or not you you acknowledge that the gas tank is on E. The car will stop. So you can acknowledge that the car is on E and get yourself to the nearest gas station.
It's not the car.
So the analogy is, you're following these teachings, you're listening to Avery, you're following law of attraction teachings, you heard the secret or whatever it is that got you into this stuff, and you get out of it, and you look at these teachings, and you're like, this stuff sucks. This stuff sucks. You kick the tires, you go tell all your friends, this wonderful Lexus that you were driving really sucks. And they're looking at you like you were crazy because your car is on E. All your other friends who were in the same, like on the same trip with you in their own cars, and they're going along, they paid attention, they stopped for gas, and you didn't. But you are out of your car now, kicking the tires, yelling at the car when the car was not the problem. You are out of your car right now, yelling at whatever teachings it is that got you to this point when the teachings are not the problem. You are clearly not paying attention.
I really love that so much of what we're talking about, I remember learning from the Abe Forum because it was so clear having people posting and sharing and having the quotes from the teachings there and being like, oh, so this is what's going on. This is what they've got in their vibration because they were saying it, right? So it was pretty easy to make that correlation. And I found that to be so valuable to see that and to realize that, like you were saying, you can walk yourself up the emotional guidance scale, and the stuff that will take you from anger to frustration is different than what will take you from frustration to contentment. And being able to see that in people's words and watch the thread and go, oh, this is what's going on, okay, and here and there to jump in and say, I wonder if I can help nudge this in one direction or another. How would I do it? And for me, that was always a really useful process of tapping into what I was feeling in response to that thread, and then tapping into what would soothe me based on what I was feeling, and then seeing how it would bring out a different side of something in other people. And I really love that. So thank you for reminding me of that, especially the
Yeah.
happy face sticker.
Well, that's another benefit of the forums, right? You have the opportunity to take what you want and leave the rest. Or you have the opportunity to get what you need at that point and then walk away And then when you're in a different vibrational place, you could revisit the same thread and get a whole different lesson. The other thing is that you can document your whole evolution. Like I remember that there were threads on there. Oh, okay. There were threads on there from folks, and they actually did walk up the scale. So you can see how their thoughts shifted throughout time. And they invited other people to do the same thing. And so it really helps. Those types of avenues really help to see like where you are on the map in terms of what's useful and what's not. And sometimes you may have to go back to some things. You know, you may have to go back to say read money and the law of attraction, because that's what is resonant for you right now. And then at a later time something else will be. Just one more thing I wanted to talk about was the eating sugar versus eating what really makes you feel good. I think part of that happens because we're going for euphoric joy when we're in depression, and we're not acknowledging where we are right now, and across any dynamic. So let's take wealth dynamics. We are the next good feeling thing would be to get the job. I mean, easiest thing to do, right? You just go somewhere, they pay you. That's the next best feeling thing, because you're in the red zone, and that's the next thing you need to do. But when we are trying to go from red to orange without going into yellow first.
Just a correction. We mean when you're trying to go to yellow from red without going to orange first. That's the correct order.
It's not going to feel good, and quote unquote. We think it's not going to feel good, but really it does if you allow yourself to feel where you are right now. And it may come along with some side, like some dissonant feelings, but the noise in it, I would say it's the noise in the frequency, the feeling of, okay, I'm gonna do this, that is going to feel, that does feel better, but then I feel shame about it. I feel guilt about it. That's the noise in there. So if you can clean up the shame and the guilt that you feel about the better feeling thing, then you don't have it, it becomes a pure better feeling thing, as opposed to something that makes you feel you never have to go through the guilt and the shame. And that again goes back to the whole resisting the path of least resistance, that you don't realize that you're already on that path and you just need to do the next better feeling thing, but from where you are, not from some other place that you think you should be. That's the key to the whole thing. From where you are, you'll get to that better feeling place. So that's all I wanted to add to that.
That's brilliant. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, from where you are. Uh, Abraham does talk about you can make a quantum leap. It is possible.
Mm.
And it's really uncomfortable. It's really not fun to do it. It's so much easier, so much simpler and faster to just be where you are, go one step at a time, move to the next place, one more step at a time, move to the next place, and let that be the simple, one foot in front of the other instead of going to try to pole jump these 50 feet across the canal. And if I miss, I'm going to end up wet and possibly with a head injury and in this canal full of who knows what kind of water. Okay, fine. Do it if you want to do it. I've been there. I've done it too. It's just so much easier to be where you are and move from there.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is also about quantum leaps is they are often unsustainable. So even when you make it over, then you're like panting and out of breath.
And you're like, the next step has got to be a quantum leap too.
Yes. But you don't have the energy to make any more quantum leaps. And furthermore, you have no foundation to take the next step. It's just like, oh crap. Now I'm out on a ledge here. I don't know where else to go. And you're kind of like, yeah, you did it. You made the leap, but it's not really sustainable at that point. And then you have to start rebuilding at that quantum leap place, which kind of like feels a little bit even more uncomfortable than it needs to feel. So I would love in our next broadcast, if we do another one, to talk about comfort and comfort zone and the getting out of your comfort zone myth. Um, the perspective on that. Maybe we could start the next conversation there.
I would love that. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to talk about comfort. I love to be comfortable.
I know.
All
And
right.
at ease. Ease is underrated, people. You need ease.
Uh-huh. Hell yeah. Until next time, shine and receive.
Yay.
Yay. Hey, pleasure seeker. Well, that's it for today's conversation. Here at Pleasure Central Radio, we love using conscious communication, science geekery, and copious amounts of true pleasure to improve our partnerships, our money, and our love lives. And we hope you do too. If you loved what you heard here, we'd love a review. You can listen to other episodes of the podcast and read thought-provoking essays or poems written by me, Radiant Rebecca, by checking out the blog on pleasurecentralpodcast.com. Tune into the show every Sunday. Sign up to hear about new episodes immediately at pleasurecentralpodcast.com. Your thought to ponder today is...
Just one more thing I wanted to talk about was the eating sugar versus eating what really makes you feel good. I think part of that happens because we're going for euphoric joy when we're in depression. And we're not acknowledging where we are right now.